Nation of Islam is like it's like its own religion. You know, it's like a fabricated, like, you know, it's very, you know, but it's very much Islam, but there's a lot of practices and teachings that they have that are not in line with, you know, Orthodox. And but yeah, you know, Elijah Muhammad is kind of this, you know, Jesus-like figure, you know, and it's interesting that I feel as though prophets only really exist in oppressed communities, you know, like the notion of like that, you know, like you don't see like all of the self-proclaimed modern prophets, or I guess that's not necessarily true, because, you know, you have cults, like, you know, but there's this level of you know, there's like this notion of heroism that's very, you know,
associated with being a prophet.
Yeah, and being with a prophet, and being, you know, from an oppressed community, you know, and yeah, he's fascinating, but he also kind of, you know, he's kind of, you know, contradictory. You know, a lot of what he stood for was contradictory. You know, he would espouse things like fidelity, and then, you know, he was an infidel himself. And, you know, he also kind of, you know, there was several moments where he was associated with like straight up assassinations and stuff. I just find that notion and like kind of the paradox of it, of being, you know, a self-proclaimed prophet, very fascinating. I relate to it in some ways, you know. Like,
well, we associate a certain heroism with being an artist too.
Yeah, exactly.
In a similar way, especially a painter.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and then, you know, I guess it's also my own insecurities are kind of wrapped up in it too. Like if I'm like, you know, sometimes I feel kind of fraudulent, you know, like I'm a fraud, you know, or maybe, you know, I don't know. But yeah, that's where that came from. But it's definitely morphed into something else now, you know. And I haven't finished anything on it. It's very frustrating.
And this is like, you did this by hand. It's not like, because sometimes your work looks like it's like almost been screen printed, like printed on, or because sometimes it like is actually stickers or
yeah, exactly. Yeah. A lot of times it's straight up like stuff I cut out of the magazine. But yeah, I also do. I try to maintain like drawing, you know. And, sometimes I just really like them, and I just paste them on there, or, you know. And that one in particular, because, you know, the vulture, and then his, you know, expression,
right,
and like almost like a, you know, vulture kind of being this predatory, you know, symbol of darkness and whatnot.
Right.
But he seems, you know, he seems disinterested in life, you know.
And like, I think maybe part of what you're talking about is like in association with the working class, but like cars and like automotive branding seems to be like a recurring thing.
Definitely. Yeah, I have you know, like I love trucks. Like I love big trucks. I love, you know, like when I was a kid, I used to watch like this one particular VHS of just big dump trucks, and that's kind of just like stuck with me. And that's you know, me and my father. You know, my dad's owns a landscape company, and when I was 14, I started working for him. And I don't know, that's something that we share, is this like, you know, fix it yourself kind of, you know, drive old trucks and get dirty and shit like that. You know? I just love that kind of shit, you know.
Right.
Yeah, and especially Chevys. I'm a Chevy. I love Chevys.
Do you watch NASCAR?
You see, NASCAR is something I've gotten into recently. I just kind of I elected to get into it because NASCAR and pro wrestling are two things that in my adulthood I've recently gotten into. Because I find it really fascinating.
It is.
Like it's grotesque, you know, and like you're talking about like the graphic quality, like there's these sports where they have that quality, which is interesting, wrestling in particular, because
I mean, and like there's also
and they're American too.
No difference between wrestling and American politics right now.
Yeah.
Like it's all this like performative charade. But yeah, I grew up like my grandparents are like within audible distance of Bristol Motor Speedway.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. So I come from like a deep NASCAR history.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But I haven't watched it in a long time.
Yeah, there's NASCAR weekends coming up.
Nice.
It's like a couple weeks from now. Atlanta Motor Speedway. But yeah.
And then cartoons, like very specific cartoons, are another thing.
Yeah, and I guess for a similar reason, cartoons. When I was a kid, I felt like I was deprived of cartoons. My parents didn't let us watch TV, and if we did, it was like it's like a very special occasion. But they played Tom and Jerry all the time, so I would catch Tom and Jerry a lot. But as soon as I got like out of school, kind of or out of my parents' house, I fell in love with cartoons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the immediacy of it. You can use a cartoon and it communicates very concisely and it didn't take much. Like a portrait, I spent a week on a portrait and then don't like it and paint over it.
Right.
Whereas I can cartoons are easy, and that's a lot of what they're like these things I use just to kind of help, what I'm doing. But yeah. And then you can abstract them too. They can be a part of the background.
Right.
And be armatures for an abstract painting or filler. Yeah, just pop culture in general. And television.
Yeah.
Advertisements. But that's just what's in my visual landscape. What I just pull from what I see. I think that painting cartoons makes as much sense as painting anything else.
Right.
Nowadays.
Right.
Because I don't see beautiful mountain streams. I see advertisements and garbage. That's what I see. But there's beauty in it. There's as much beauty in it. It's not as visually striking, but if you there's content in that. But then you can manipulate it and make it your own. But yeah, I guess it's just what most of what I use is what's readily available. But I do want to kind of return back to more traditional paintings. Or I don't know. I say things. We'll see.
Have you had a solo show yet?
I have not. I haven't really pursued one. I feel like I haven't had a body of work that I felt like I could, that I was like confident about from through and I feel like I'm getting there though.
Yeah, I think hesitating. I'm not a huge advocate for hesitation, but I think in that regard, it's really wise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah.
Cause I really want.
I think not being in a rush is a good thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of like where I'm at. I felt there was a period of time where, right after school, where I felt like I was like behind. Like I went to Oglethorpe, and I went to Oglethorpe because I got a soccer scholarship. It was academic, but and I played soccer there, and soccer was like my original passion. My first. I'm the best at playing soccer. Or of all the things I'm good at, I'm the best at playing soccer. And
better than painting?
Yeah, without a doubt. I was a damn good soccer player in my youth. So I went to Oglethorpe there because of that and stayed. And I loved, the education that I'm very happy with. I had I took a lot of philosophy classes and had a very well-rounded education. And but I felt like I was at a disadvantage, so I was like kind of anxious when and I had I wasted all of those years not making work or work that I really liked, and then so like 2 years ago I guess it was 3 years ago when I graduated, I had this felt like I needed to rush and make work, but since then
Is it the anxiety that you said you feel like when you're in the studio that you're like catching up or?
Yeah, and that's another thing is like because I work, I work full work week. I come home tired, and oftentimes I feel as though I need to catch up, just production wise. And I think that's part of the anxiety is just time, feeling like I'm losing time. But now I'm not really worried about like I'm behind my peers or anything like that.
Right.
I was worried about that, but now I'm more confident and feel like I know I have a grasp of what it is I do.
Yeah. I mean, I think from an outsider's perspective, I think part of what made your work so striking was that I hadn't seen it to death already, which is often the case for people I know who go through Georgia State or SCAD. By the time they graduate, you've seen all their student work for 4 years or at least 2 years, and you're like, okay, I feel like I know this person already. I'm kind of waiting for the next thing. And so then to see your work seemingly pop out of nowhere and be so ambitious, I was like, who is this person?
Well, I'm glad that's
in some ways I think having less actually allows you to say more or something,
right. Yeah, and that I'm glad that you feel that way. Because I say these things to myself, but to hear someone else say it is nice. Because I certainly feel that way. The little bit of success, because that was my first show really, was Hilo, and I had an exit show at Oglethorpe,
right,
and then a couple small house shows, and I think I had a piece at the bakery for a week, but it was real small things, and that was my first show, and that was less than a year ago, and I since then, I've had a lot of things come my way, so I'm not worried about that anymore.
Right.
I'm kind of trying to be more conservative and exactly give what post less, pursue less, just worry about the work.
Yeah. What you were saying about soccer reminded me of the painter Ridley Howard, who lives in Athens.
Really, Howard?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm familiar.
You should look up his work because there are actually kind of elements of Jal's work that reminds me, like this idea of having like a really sort of finely executed portrait alongside more like abstract, almost geometric elements. That's like also something he would do, I feel like.
Yeah.
But he was a big soccer player, and he's also, I mean, he grew up in Atlanta and went to UGA, and then lived in New York for a long time and became like a semi-famous painter there, and then moved back to Athens like 2 or 3 years ago, with his wife Holly Koulis, who's also a painter, and but he's like kind of, I mean, he is a big sports fan, but then also I think like living in Athens in such proximity to UGA, he's like kind of playing up this sports fan persona in a kind of like funny, ironic way, but it's not really ironic because it's true. But he said that like painters and sports fans have this thing in common, that they can become like 100% emotionally involved in something that's like completely imaginary and like doesn't actually have,
right,
like real life consequences in a certain sense. And I've always thought that was an interesting thing, because I'm someone who like felt very not connected to sports growing up. I mean, this is like the perfect weekend to have this conversation, right? Like, it's undeniable what a sort of commercial force they are, but also just like visually and culturally, that I have like a respect for it now. And even just like seeing Dale Earnhardt in a painting like makes my day, because that's also something that's like familiar from my like visual landscape growing up. Right. So that's sort of surprising to see in a contemporary art context for me as like a kid who grew up in East Tennessee.
Right.
So I think that's part of what I love about your work too.
Yeah, and I think that the art world nowadays is very much like sports too. Like, it's aggressive, and there's a lot of money, and very competitive, and I think that that's another reason why I use sports so much, is because I think it's relevant to what we're involved in, I guess. But I also feel as though sports, like what I learned on the soccer field, definitely plays a role in the way I work in the studio. Like when I'm here, it feels very much like a dance or something. It's a physical activity for me, and I listen to I listen to a lot of hip hop, and I get kind of like worked up, and there's also like this kind of competitive nature in me, to be better, and I don't know, it definitely plays a big role for me. But yeah, and culturally too, like you said, sports represent. It means so much to so many people.
Exactly.
In soccer, it's the world sport, and I feel a connectivity to cultures worldwide, just because I have a relationship with soccer, and soccer is a very creative sport too. Like, like football, and I talk about this a lot, and it's almost, sound like a broken record, it's not that interesting, but football is a sport with a lot of roles, and like each player has a very specific role, and they do that role their entire career, they tackle people, they hit people, or they run the ball, whereas in soccer, there's not those distinctions, and and it's not relying upon plays, and it's very intuitive and organic, and I don't know, and maybe this is just me, romanticizing, or I don't know, but I feel as though that comes out from my work, and I try to maintain that, these paintings felt when I'm making them. It feels like ceramics or like pottery or something. You know, like I'm on the wheel. You know, like pulling and pushing them. And,
Yeah, I often feel like writing to me feels like some form of sculpture. Like it feels like when I've written something that it has like physical presence in the world. And that's part of and as an editor, I think something that I am really careful about is like I want there to be this sense of like structural integrity and like you could like knock on it and like hear something and it's not hollow.
Right.
But that sounds crazy.
Right. No, but I completely understand